Andrew Costa here. I'm the church founding vicar here at the Dark County Anglican Church, and welcome to our beautiful space. One of the questions we wanted to ask with some of this online content was, what is the historical and theological significance of the Book of Common Prayer's services? So we start to understand the way Anglicans worship and how that connects us to those who came before us. Well, I'm not going to focus on the whole prayer book. This is too much content. So this week we'll focus on the Holy Communion rite. So in medieval Christianity, medieval Catholicism, church was done in Latin. The services were done in Latin. The singing was done in Latin. The business of the church happened in Latin. Latin created this universal language that the church could speak to one another. So that way a French clergyman and a German clergyman and an English clergyman could all speak to each other in a shared language. One of the things that was happening was a lot of Catholic priests didn't understand Latin. They weren't learning the language as a usable language. They were learning how to say the things of the liturgy, so they could say the liturgy in Latin, but they didn't understand what they were saying and what it meant. Since they didn't know what they were saying and what it meant, definitely the laity, the people who were attending church, they really didn't understand Latin, and they really didn't understand what the liturgy meant. And so there was this breakdown within the church. And so the early reformers, Luther amongst them, and then Cranmer over here, and then Calvin in Switzerland, all saw that the language of the church had to move to become the language of the people. That if you lived in an English-speaking area, your Latin services should transition to English or French or those sorts of things. So what the English church did is it said, okay, let's translate our Latin services into English, and then we'll also make some revisions where we feel like Protestant theology should be accentuated, what they call evangelical theology, which I think is still a good word for it. And so in England, there was a liturgy at the cathedral in Salisbury, or Sarum in Latin. And so they took this Salisbury rite, or this Sarum rite, and translated it into English. So our prayer book is actually very much connected to and following the Salisbury rite, or the Sarum rite, as far as what's been translated into what. So if you took the Latin Salisbury rite and just translated it into English, and then you took our rite and you stacked them up next to each other, you would notice significant similarities between them. But there were revisions that put forth some theological convictions of those early reformers. One of the most important ones was that the sacrificial death of Jesus Christ is sufficient to pay the sins of all people in its moment, and is applied to those who are saved. But there was a belief in the Roman Church at that time that the Mass was a re-sacrificing of Christ over and over again to apply to the saints over and over again. And the early reformers, Calvin, Luther, Zwingli, Cranmer, all believed that the sacrifice of Christ was sufficient, and there was no need to re-sacrifice Christ. And that to have that in the Mass, or to have that in the church services of the time, really confuses people and really creates some other theological problems. And so the Book of Common Prayer, our communion rite, really is making the point that Christ sufficiently pays for us all. And that's one of the great joys of our communion service. Well, hey, I'll come back and we'll talk a lot more about our communion services, because I think they're lovely and they're worth knowing something about. But in the meantime, I hope that you have a blessed day. So long.